What's up YouTube, and welcome back to Homebrew Subaru. In this episode I'll be installing a new oil pan and the oil cooler. So what's up people, I've got a short episode for you today. All I want to really do is put on a new oil pan onto my EJ257 single overhead cam. The pan that's on this engine is actually an NA pan, and in order to install the turbo exhaust manifold you have to use a turbo oil pan. So I'm going to do this job this morning and something just like clicked when I went looking for it. This is the original pan that was on this STI block, and it is dented in the bottom, but I literally could have pounded that out and straightened it out quite a bit, cleaned it up and repainted it and reused it. But for the cost of the $60 or so, I'm just going to go ahead and install this brand new pan and toss the old one. And on top of that, because I ended up taking the oil cooler off of this engine when I put it into my last car, that now that I have an oil cooler set up from this WRX, I'm going to get that installed. I have a new gasket for the cooler. I went out and bought an oil filter this morning, so I'll get that stuff rigged up. So first things first is spin this thing around and get the old oil pan off of it. Okay, so I've gotten all the old parts off and everything really cleaned up. I've dug out the new oil pan, and I've gotten the windage plate and the oil pickup tube from the WRX. Now it's going to need a serious cleaning. It's got some bearing material that's been left on it. So I need to do some major parts cleaning. The pickup tube, the windage plate, the oil cooler. And then I want to start bolting that stuff in place to make sure that this pan fits on properly, because it's an aftermarket pan and I just want to make sure that that shielding inside fits over top of the pickup tube properly. I ran into that issue with that NA pan that I had to trim up a little bit. And then once I'm sure that everything's going to work properly, then I'll put silicone to it. I don't want to be lifting it on and off with silicone or the gray RTV gasket maker. And then once I get the pan all torqued on, I can move on to the oil cooler and put the oil filter on after that. Now that I have this thing all back together, there's a few things that I want to note. These aftermarket oil pans are just not the greatest thing. The return was a little bit tweaked, so getting the pan to initially line up, I had to adjust that. And then after the pan was actually installed, the dipstick tube inlet to the pan was pretty much pointing right at the water pump, so it needed to be tweaked over pretty far. It's not, I mean, everything's pretty flexible in here, and you don't really have to worry about the weld cracking. It didn't for me. Everything's still retained, and I've got the dipstick tube all in there and attached. Another thing is the dipstick tubes. I'm not sure if they are the same from NA to turbo engines, where how they bolt up onto the head, the little bracket there, but the sticks are the same. So I looked up the part number from WRX to just an NA Impreza, and the dipstick is the same part number. I have also been looking around online for an M20 by 1.5 thread pipe fitting that I can put into the back of the cylinder head for my cylinder 4 cooling mod. And then when I got the fitting out for the oil filter, I realized, oh, that looks like M20 1.5. Sure enough, it threads into the back of the head. So I've had a little trouble finding a male thread with barb. Maybe I'll find a female with barb easier. So I mean, that's just an option, but I think I also found a Subaru part number, and I'll kind of throw it in right here for a bypass fitting that can thread into the back of the head. Hopefully that's something I can order. There is a couple little hoses and some hardware that I want to get from the dealer anyway, so I'm probably going to place that order next. At least I made a little bit of progress and got a little bit more done. Doing all these things and resealing everything with all new gaskets and seals is, I just want to make sure this thing, when it goes in, it's not going to leak, it's not going to cause me any issues. So I'm really going to go over everything and make it just absolutely solid and reliable. And I guess that's it for this one. If you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here and you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Leave your questions and comments further down below, and I'll see you in the next one.